A 2019 survey found 70% of people with albinism reported feeling underrepresented in media. Welcome to the SYV Podcast. My name remains ProsperLight. Today we'll be discussing the importance of representation and diversity in media and entertainment for individuals with albinism. To join me on today's conversation is the phenomenal Bunmi Adefisayo, a professional photographer based in Lagos. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much, Prosper. Great to be here.
How can media and entertainment industries improve representation for individuals with albinism?
All right. Thank you, Prosper. I think that's a very, very important question. I think on the surface, the answer is just get more people with albinism on your sets. That's like the simplest answer to give. But I guess the more interesting question is why? Why should we have more people with albinism being represented in media and entertainment? At least to me, that's a more interesting question to ask. Then we can now dovetail into how we can get more people. So when I think about it, being in the media space, being in the entertainment space, we are creatives. So what we do is that as creatives, you're trying to tell a story, and art pulls from real life. You want to tell a diversity of stories. You want to broaden your audience base. You want to get people more interested in your work. How better than to get a group of people who have a unique experience that's different from the experience of the everyday, what I would call melanated person. So if you can pull those experiences into your story, you can imagine how much richer we would have our entertainment space in Nigeria. Not that, the media isn't trying, not that our filmmakers aren't doing well, but that there are just so many interesting stories, and people with albinism have their stories to tell. And being able to pull them into that space and bringing them up front just makes for a more culturally richer, more diverse, more vibrant entertainment space in Nigeria. So that's why I would, and in general, not just in Nigeria, but in Africa and the world in general. So that's why I would say that, that's to me the importance of getting people with albinism into the media and entertainment space.
I also believe that to tell an authentic Nigerian story or African story, you need persons with albinism because we exist in everyday life and we are here. Now, there's also lack of representation. There's something that the lack of representation does, for the albino community. Can you, shed light on that? Because we need to also understand what misinterpretation can also do for persons with albinism.
Yeah, that's a very great question. So just as you rightly noted, there's a lack of representation is kind of like an understatement. There's almost no representation, because if you think about it, like in the Nigerian space particularly, there's just one prominent actor with albinism, Damilola Ogunsi. Apart from him, I haven't seen anyone. Okay, so you would see certain people, they're in such minor roles,
True.
And those roles are usually stereotyped to, this is the person with albinism, you can't see, so there's this stereotype surrounding. But you have great actors like Damilola who are breaking the mold and, going into spaces that you wouldn't traditionally see people with albinism. So yeah, I think that underrepresentation definitely is a problem for those of us in the community. And why is it a problem? Like, you're watching media, you're watching something that you enjoy. You don't see yourself represented, one, or you see yourself represented in a way that's not authentic to you. So I remember there was one, I can't remember the name of the movie, it was an American movie about, I don't know if his name is Powder, I'll have to go and look up the name, but it was about this young boy with albinism who grew up in a poor community. Obviously the stereotype of him being stigmatized and all, but then they found out that, he had this magic power where he could find water by holding a coat hanger, and that was one of the representations of people with albinism. Then of course you have the more modern ones, like in the Matrix. I don't know if people even recognize that those two twins in the Matrix, the two twins in the Matrix, they had albinism, people with albinism. Then of course you have the Da Vinci Code where the bad guy is the guy with albinism, and he was just a messed up guy, completely messed up, flagellating, flogging himself, all that. So you see that kind of representation, and to someone with albinism, they're like, that's not me. That's not my everyday reality. I cannot magically find water anywhere, right? And I don't have martial arts skills like you see these guys in the Matrix, and I'm not necessarily evil or more evil than the other person. So it is. I guess my point is that it is critical to have an authentic, just as you rightly noted, you do need an authentic representation of people with albinism, because we live normal lives, but with certain limitations. Those limitations shouldn't be glossed over. You can't hide them, but still, we do lead these lives, and it's important for people with albinism to see themselves represented in that light. So that's how I think about representation for people with albinism, targeted at people in the albinism community who want to see themselves more accurately represented, more authentically represented in media.
Talking about stereotype, I also believe that inadequate portrayal of person with albinism do more harm than good for a person with albinism. So there's a need for authentic storytelling. But how can audience support and request for diverse representation of person with albinism?
How can the audience? So I guess I take a different viewpoint to that. I don't know. So it depends on what audience you're talking about. The typical person going to the movie is not automatically thinking in his head, oh, I want to see more people with albinism on stage. That's not what they're. So that's one demographic. The other is the people with albinism, right? Sure. Who may want, who even they themselves, like, I didn't necessarily say I needed to see more people with albinism. It's just that when I saw them on stage or in a movie, I would have preferred for it to be more authentically representative of someone who is living with albinism. But if we are talking about how do we, especially, I guess I would target those of us who are the albinism community, in that we need to be bolder in telling our own stories, right? So we need more producer. I don't know any producer, major, minor, except you have these guys that do all these skits online, which, that's a whole other story. And I won't even go into that one, but we need, so first of all, we need people with albinism who are in the driver's seat. Like you're the one producing the movie, producing the commercial, whatever it is, right? You're the one producing it. And if we don't have that, that's a starting point for me. Let us be the ones to start to tell our stories and tell them in an excellent, visually pleasing way. So I think that's an important starting point. And of course, anybody else who is like, and I would challenge like any creative director is that get creative in pulling people with albinism into your movies. Like you don't need to highlight the obvious disabilities. You can weave them creatively into whatever creative endeavor that you're doing. So that's but my challenge is that let us within the community who are living with this condition, let us be the ones to tell our stories and put it out there. Then we can now start to push the conversation
very
further.
true, because no one tells the story better than a victim.
Exactly right.
And also I think that advocacy organizations should venture into storytelling, because that is one way to sensitize the society and tell people about albinism, not just the regular campaigns, symposiums, and seminars. You can tell create a short film, a feature-length film, and tell authentic stories about persons with albinism.
Yep.
All right, so we'll be moving over to the next segment of the show, which is actually the myth bunking. So the first one is albinism can be cured through traditional or spiritual remedies.
If it can't be, I haven't seen it happen. No, obviously it can't be cured. It's not an incurable. It's not a disease that needs to be cured. It's a genetic. It occurs at the genetic level, so it's not a disease that needs to be cured.
And it's crazy that there are places in some parts of the world where parents of people with albinism try to cure their children albinism with traditional remedies. So that's a myth and it's not true.
Yeah.
So let's do better.
soaking
The
them in
second
the sun.
one, people with albinism are. You said something.
Yeah, or soaking them in the sun. I've come across stories where the parents were told that they should let their child be in the sun longer. The longer they're in the sun, I remember there was some newspaper articles.
No way.
Yeah. I
Like,
actually
They
watched
hate
an
you and
interview.
your children because what kind of advice is that?
Yeah. I obviously these were like villagers, deep village, but they said
Very ignorant people.
soak them. Of course, you know what happens. They get skin cancer, the child dies, develops a very terrible skin cancer, and the
And they
rest
tell
is history.
them they are back to where they come from.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
Exactly.
It is well.
Crazy.
The second one, people with albinism are more susceptible to disease.
So I guess that depends on the disease you're talking about. If it's cancer, skin cancer, yes, just because of exposure to the sun, undue exposure, because we have little protection against that. So yeah, definitely in terms of skin cancer. But in terms of other diseases, it's pretty much. I get malaria the same way as anybody else who get malaria.
Very correct.
And so on. Yeah.
Very true. The last one, people with albinism are socially isolated or reclusive.
There's some truth to that. Of course, there are many factors that could influence. You being a recluse could be a factor of your personality. Maybe you're just more introverted. The social stigma doesn't help. It really doesn't help that, I guess maybe social stigma is a strong word, but negative comments and microaggressions and so on doesn't help. So yeah, you do tend to find that quite a number of people with albinism would be a bit more retreatist in their approach to life than, being out there. But hey, is where society can do better, right? We're normal people. So it's not like we're these weird creatures that are just so different from everybody else and so should be kept away. And even to encourage people with albinism, we have a lot to offer. If you step out of your comfort zone and just put yourself out there, you'll be surprised at the great things that would come.
Like I said, there's a lot of possibilities.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of possibilities.
Yeah.
Talking about media, there's print, there's TV and online space. So, it's a broad spectrum. You have different parts of media that you could take advantage in telling stories, diverse stories. Yeah. So apart from just short films, feature-length films, I believe you could write articles about persons with albinism. You could post pictures on your timeline, As a person with albinism and also maybe you are melanated, you could also celebrate the International Albinism Awareness Day, just by sensitizing society about, albinism. Talking about different type of media, Mr. Bunmi is a professional photographer based in Lagos. Tell us, how has the experience been and how have you been able to use your career in photography to, promote representation for individuals with albinism?
Yeah, thank you. I guess let me start by saying that I can do more. We can all do more. I would love to do more. But in terms of so I guess I look at it two ways, right? There's a professional side of it, which is that I'm a photographer, and one of the unique things that I think I bring to the table is the use of how I see the world to be able to portray my clients in the way that I see the world. So if you look at my work, my own unique physical, I guess you call it physical limitations, influence the way that I frame my clients, frame my subjects, and portray them to the world. So you see that I focus a lot on tight headshots because I like to be close. First of all, if I'm doing a full body portrait, there are many details that I know I will miss because I don't see it very well. But if I'm if I'm focusing on tight headshots, which is, you go on my page, you see a lot of headshots or half body portraits and so on. If you focus on that, you'll notice that, they're very tight. The subject is right in the middle of the frame. There's nothing else distracting. So that's one way, because I don't want distractions will quote unquote distract me, right? And anything can go wrong and I won't see it. So I just focus on the person. And then my work is heavy on contrast. So because I don't see very well, I need the pictures to be sharp with heavy contrast, shadows, they're what you call moody portraits. So I enjoy that, and I enjoy portraying my subjects in that frame. And when I think about, so I've had the pleasure, the opportunity of shooting several people with albinism. Thanks to Prosper for being one of them. I think we had.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we had some great images from
exceptional
that.
portrait.
Yeah, thanks. We had some great images. So, what I try to do is that, and I recently just did a headshot session for Tolani Ojuri, chairman of the AA and Albinism Association in Lagos. So, what I try to do is that when I'm shooting anyone with albinism, I want to portray them in the best possible light, but without removing things that are a necessary part of them. Like, for instance, you have some people with albinism will have these black heads, black dots, maybe because of sun exposure or whatever. So if I'm shooting them, I won't take out those black dots because that's a false representation of that person, right?
Sure.
So I won't take out any feature that's if anybody sees you in real life, they'll be like, but this is not
this is different from
what
picture.
I saw. Yeah. So I want to bring, so when I shoot people with albinism, I want them to show in the best possible way without removing distractions, without removing all these tiny blemishes that I believe that is what makes the person the unique person. Otherwise, all of us would just be one photoshopped, over-edited, hair, and then we all look the same. Everybody will just all look the same. But no, I think that it's fair to represent people in the light that, in the way that they bring themselves to you. So that's what my work really focuses on. I would love to do a lot more, especially with men with albinism. Like, I would love to shoot more men with albinism. I would love them to come to my studio. Let's do a project. I get a lot of women who want to, because they see my work, they also want to be part of that. I'm like, I've shot so many women. It's like, one more woman will not do me any. But I would love to also highlight men with albinism who would love to. Yeah, I would love to highlight them in the best possible light that I can possibly, and show them for who they are to the world.
You can also tell us your Instagram, because I'm sure people watching right now might want to send a DM and
Yeah, I would love. Yeah, sure. It's BAP Studios. That's BAP Studios NG. On Instagram, also on Twitter. I find Twitter to be a great place to also engage with people and put out my work. So it's at BAP Studios, BAP Studios NG, on both Instagram and X/Twitter. So yeah, that's where you can find me. That's where you can find all of my work.
Some persons might be wondering, why is there a need to, have diverse storytelling? Why do you need person with albinism or any other person with physical disability on a project? Why do we need to tell stories about them? Why do we need to include them in our storyline? What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so that's two great questions. One, why do we need to tell their stories? Why do we need to include them in, quote unquote, our own stories? So I think the very first answer I would give is because of creativity and interest. Like, it's very, if you look at any typical movie, you will see a diversity of people. And it's that kind of diversity of people of all types of physical, they look different physically, even though, yes, there's a stereotype of like the main actor being, tall, dark, and handsome, the star woman being slim and beautiful and all that. But you still see, even in the supporting cast and all that, you see this diversity, and they bring so much life into your story, so much life into your entertainment. Like, so I would take any story maker and say, hey, because I remember the first time I saw Damlola on a movie, I was shocked. Like, I had never seen it before. I was like, wait, is this a mistake? Like what? Wow. Or did they find the European, or whatever. Like I was just genuinely shocked to see someone who I could identify as a person with albinism, and it made the story so much richer for me. But the movie was not highlighting necessarily the condition of having albinism. It was just the fact that he was there, right? That really drew me. It was like, wow, this is great. And they have this. I'm not even promoting the movies. I'm not. Nobody has paid me. They had this great movie. I'm going to see Get Out. I think that Damilola is in. Just seeing him in that role and seeing his interpretation of it was very.
I mean, that is what we want to see, basically. And you might be wondering. I also think that it can also be considered a market strategy, because trust me, there is a market for the albino community. We have horse, we are existing, and then like you said, one of the reasons why you wanted to see that movie was because you saw Damilola Ogunsi in it. Imagine how many more persons with albinism would have watched that movie just because of that same reason. So basically, it's also a market strategy. But beyond marketing and whatever, it is more of telling authentic story, and also
So can I come in there? So the way I look at it is that you're not telling a story for the sake of telling a story, right? In the sense that you're not telling it, you don't want to. So we have stories of people who are underrepresented. That's great. But I'm also talking about just getting someone who has had a unique experience within the African context. Like, you can imagine what he brings into, what such a person will bring into your story. The determination, the grit, the drive because he wants to excel.
True.
Brought him into it. So you look at Damilola, like, I remember and sorry, I keep mentioning Damilola because he's really the only one that we can point to. I hope women would also, we should have a woman Damilola at some point. I would love to see that, because if you look at society, you see people married to people with albinism.
Very true.
Women. So it's like, I don't see why we can't have a woman in that role, in that leading role as well, right? I think so. But anyway, back to my point is that you see, those are Gangs of Lagos. Damilola's scene in the warehouse, extremely powerful. Like, I could almost say that's probably the best performance in the movie. No shade to anybody else. But that warehouse scene where he was talking to, I can't remember the guy on the chair, and he was explaining, that was such a powerful scene. And I'm not saying anybody else couldn't do it, but I recognized, but when you listen to where Damilola was coming from, you can see that there's a drive to excellence that he put himself through. He went to film academy abroad in New York, for crying out loud. So he had that drive. So imagine you give someone that opportunity who probably wouldn't have had that opportunity, the drive that person would have, and what they would bring into your project. I think it would be unparalleled. It's a very powerful thing.
Beautiful. Beyond just having person with albinism on your project, we have professional actors. Yeah. Basically, we have professional actors, so you could, call for an audition and, see how many person with albinism come to the audition, and you can cast based on their excellence, based on what they have to bring to the table, not just because we are saying we need to see more person with albinism. We also need to see professionals.
Exactly.
Basically, we need to see professionals. Basically, so if you are a rising actor, rising creative, you have a lot of work to do, basically. So we're not just saying we need to see more person with albinism because we want to see more persons with albinism. Exactly. We want to see more professionals in the industry. So you have a lot of work to do. Like you said, Damilola went to film school. You can also go to film school. You can also, develop your craft. And, when you're ready, you're ready. And I believe that there's a place for every one of us, to fly. So yeah, moving on to the next segment, which is the Q&A. So, people send in questions and we try our best to provide answers on the show. Yeah. The first one, I have never met someone with albinism before. Can you explain how it affects your daily life? This is from Adam.
How it affects my daily life. So, personally, obviously the obvious things are I try not to be in the sun for too long. always use sunscreen. When I do need to go out, I would make sure that I use sunscreen. When I don't have time to use sunscreen, make sure that the outfits I'm wearing are covered enough. So long sleeves, high collars, a hat. I always have a hat on, so that shields me from the sun. And of course, I wear glasses, so those are accommodations to, everyday life. But apart from that, I don't go around every day thinking I'm about to enter a bank. I have albinism. Oh my goodness. I'm about to enter a store. It's not something that immediately comes into my mind. So I would say that I lead a pretty normal life with these adjustments like my glasses and, sunscreen and all that.
I am struggling to accept my own skin condition. How did you come to terms with your albinism? This is from Onyema.
That's a very, very powerful question. So how did I come to terms with it? I think, so there are two things. One, there's internal, then there's external. So I'll start with external. External is the people around you, your friends, your family. They are a huge help. I have an amazing family that's very supportive right from when I was young. They were always looking for how to ensure that I didn't get the typical things that were associated with, things like cancer, making sure that I had glasses and all that. So yeah, your friends and family, especially when they can give you that emotional support, very important. So it's very important to stick around people who positively reinforce you. That's the external part of it. The internal part is, I guess the easiest way to say it is that I just had to come to terms with it. Like, I just had to sit down one day and say that, look, I'm a person with albinism. This is what I am. This is what I look like. There's no hiding it, right? So you look into a mirror. I guess one exercise you can do is that just take a mirror, look into a mirror and just keep staring at it. Just keep looking at it and just know that eventually at some point you realize, hey, this is what I am. This is who I look like. There are other people who are like me, who experience the same thing. And it doesn't take anything away from me being a human or me being able to function properly in society. You just have to get yourself into that. And I really want to emphasize, get people around you who are positive. You can't have people who are around you constantly making fun of you. Even
You
if
cannot survive there.
Yeah.
You will not.
Even if they are doing it in a friendly way, after a while, it becomes tiring.
Exactly.
It becomes tiring. So you have to have people around you who positively reinforce you.
Very true. The last question, how can we support and advocate for people with albinism? This is Darlington.
There's so many ways you can do it. I mean, you can do what Prosper is doing right here. You can start your own podcast. You can support, essentially supporting organizations that promote, like the Albinism Association of Nigeria. You can join and support. You don't even have to be a person with albinism to join such organizations. You can join them and support. And even in your own little space, if you see anything like anybody, so I'll give you a quick example. So I was in church one day. Coming out of church, I had a father who was holding his daughter, and the daughter was saying, the father came out with his daughter and was holding his daughter. The daughter was crying. I was standing next to him. The father now pointed the daughter to me and said, see. So she turned and stopped crying. And I remember one of my friends immediately turned to him and was like, sir, that is very wrong. You cannot use somebody else's difference to try and pacify your own daughter. Deal with so you can advocate for people in your own way when you see a wrong being done to them. Yeah.
You can also request for diverse representation from filmmakers, storytellers. I mean, just like our topic for today. Demand, go on their comment section, join their live stream, do everything you need to do to request for persons with albinism, on their story. Now moving on to the visionary trailblazer for today. Okay, I'm always excited about this one because we actually read about remarkable persons with albinism doing well and setting the pace for every one of us. Not everyone understands what it's like to take your fate in your hands, or the risk involved to switch careers without a safety net, especially in a country like Nigeria. But it is not an impossible feat, as a remarkable man alongside a couple others all over the world have shown us. This man in question is no other than Damilola Ogunsi. And after filming his seventh film, The Tribunal, he had this to say: "I have showed that a talented actor with albinism could play a lead role in a movie and be fantastic in his delivery. With the way I live my life, I have been able to show that there is more to human than their skin tone. Now, if that isn't an example of a man setting the pace for others to follow, I don't know what it is." To think that you made a reference of Damilola when we were having the conversation today was, really amazing. Damilola is doing well, basically,
Yes,
and
he
is,
is.
Damilola is a actual representation of persons with albinism in the film space. So thank you so much for inspiring all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dami.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bunmi. It was
Thank
really,
you.
really nice having this conversation with you. Thank you so much. So, guys, beyond your skin tone, we all have the duty of responsibility. Every one of us need to, sensitize society about what albinism is. And I'm actually calling out everyone to join us on this laudable crusade, because it is it is a laudable crusade. I'm calling out everyone to join us. Thank you so much for joining in.
Yeah, thank you so much.